Okay, and welcome back to Port Royal's public hearing, June 5th, 2024 at 6:30. Right now, we have two items up for public hearing. First is, and again, here's anyone that wishes to be heard on these can. Up first is 2024-10, an ordinance to amend as follows, Section 1 of Ordinance 2023-9 to provide for the levy of taxes for ordinary town purposes in the town of Port Royal, South Carolina for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024, and to provide for the expenditures thereof. The second amendment is 2024-11, an ordinance to approve the court department budget for the fiscal year belonging in July 1st, 2024. Just again to remind everybody, we separate those out. I do some work for the Public Defender's Office, and the Public Defender's Office does get money from the town. So we remove myself out from that. You've seen for a couple of years, I always recuse myself for that point. But essentially what this is just a public comment about the budget that we're having. We just had our third budget workshop, and we will vote next Wednesday on the second reading for the budget, and that allows us to go forward and continue to function as a town. So is there anyone in the public that would like to be heard on 2024-10 and 2024-11? Hearing none, we will now close the public hearing and move quickly over to our council workshop. June 5th, 2024 council workshop. First thing we have up here is a presentation, which are always fun. Police recognition. We've got Chief in the back with some of Port Royal's finest. If y'all could just come up here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, sir.
They can all come up and be a part of it.
Yeah, come on up.
They support her.
Whole group. Mayor, Council, thank you for giving us a few minutes to recognize PFC Glendo. Let's put these on. In recognition of your courageous and life-saving actions at the Sands Beach, Port Royal, South Carolina, April 24th, 2024, PFC Glendo put herself in harm's way to save a person from drowning. As a result of her immediate action, the life of another was saved. Her professionalism and dedication to duty reflects great credit upon herself and in keeping with the highest tradition of the Port Royal Police Department. Please recognize her for what she did. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll take a picture along.
Yay.
Would you like to say a few words?
Oh, God, no.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. Well, if you can just hold on there, we will get a picture, but if
Okay.
council has anything, they...
Again, thank you for all of you, thank you for your service, and that was commendable.
And I know that any of y'all would have done it, and we
Yep.
appreciate what y'all do for our community and the people.
She didn't even think. She had that vest off and her gun belt in probably 10 seconds. So,
And how long you been with the...
Smart thinking.
How long you been with the department?
I've been in since September.
Okay, awesome, great. Well, thank you all so much. Yeah, council want to step down, we'll get a picture with everybody. Yeah, come on up.
Y'all want to take a step back closer to the, yeah, please.
Okay, you got everybody?
I can get everybody. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. One more. Let-
One, two, three.
There he is. Still working on it. Good luck. Thank you.
Persistence. Okay, well, that was great. Great way to start out a meeting.
Yep.
Thank you again to Port Royal Police Department, our fire department, EMS, and all the first responders that do so much. You know, public safety is kind of #1 goal, so we really owe all of them a lot. Up next is another presentation, Paris Avenue Streetscapes. If you remember, I can't remember exactly when it was, we had the Tourette's here, we came in and gave comments. Those comments have now been taken back, and we now have a presentation on those comments. So,
Yeah, we have Michael Klink and Josh Tiller here to kind of give y'all an overview of the comments, how they incorporated the comments that they received both from council, from the public, into the potential streetscape improvements for Paris Avenue.
okay.
Yes. It's only 400 pages long, so it's okay.
Well, and let me ask just so just so everyone knows kind of where we're at in the process. You know, this is something we started talking about. Again, as with anything of this size, you know, funding is going to be a big thing. So I'm sure you'll get into some numbers. And as you just saw our budget, so you can do a kind of, you know, a percentage of what, you know, like I said, the funding is going to be significant. But as you know, we did have the public hearing, public comment. So right now those have been taken back. And just, yeah, if y'all could just hit on that when you go through that, kind of where we're at in the process of this.
Sure.
So,
So along with the plans is a design basis report. I don't know if you want to bring that up and we can flip through it real quick. But basically what we created was a preliminary master plan for Paris Avenue, which is approximately 3,900 feet, which is 0.75 miles. To where we got, we had several meetings, including a public open house to go over comments and incorporate them into the design. One of the meetings that we had from the start in 2023 was kind of what were the priorities of the town, and that was pedestrian traffic, businesses, parking, and then lastly, traffic. Kind of keep going here. The design process was design staff review meetings for a 15%, and then also we conducted the public meeting and then finalized it to a preliminary design where we're at right now. And really what it is, it's conceptual design drawings in order to get opinion of probable construction costs and kind of an overall standard for the town if they want to make these upgrades on Paris Avenue. Some of the main items that occurred were removing the medians, and Josh can get into more on that aspect, on reducing the basic traffic calming. There's a typo right there. It says 220 miles per hour. It's 22.
They're doing about 200.
So we decreased it. We didn't increase it. So.
You flying a jet?
So another part of it is to narrow the travel lanes to 10 feet wide, which also helps slow down traffic. And then raised tables, which is like a larger speed hump. Dedicated crosswalks throughout Paris Avenue. And then there's pinch points which kind of slow down traffic depending on getting to a smaller lane. A geotechnical report was done. That's the existing conditions of the roadway, and that just helps with costs. There are limitations of Paris Avenue. One of them is, as everybody's aware of, when vehicles are parked, they encroach into the lanes. So a big part of what we tried to accomplish was to resolve that by either doing parallel parking or doing angled parking where that would not occur. So that was one limitation currently. There are several places with 4-foot wide sidewalks, and since one of the goals of the town was to have for pedestrians and walkways, we wanted to increase that. There's also buildings that encroach into the right-of-way, including the town hall, which is actually significantly into the right-of-way, so it kind of shortens it up and also impacts how grading is and how the sidewalks will be done. Moving to roadway modifications. Starts with a modification at the Reboat Road intersection. It also goes throughout the driveways. Certain driveways were eliminated to help with pedestrian traffic for not crossing multiple driveways, so it's a safer for the pedestrians. Moving to roadway cross sections. These are also shown in the design plans. It is the cross sections that are showing the sidewalks. They're showing the roadways of 10 feet wide and the typical sidewalks of either 10 or 12 feet wide on each side. So something that was really important to the town after several of the meetings that kind of, even with the public, was the on-street parking. As you can see, these two tables are pretty significant. The first one is the current parking right now. There's 287 total parking spots currently. 87 of those meet the standard. So part of the problem with those vehicles sticking out in the lanes is that it's not meeting the current standard of the town. So there were a significant amount that didn't meet the standard. With the new plan and conceptual plan that was put together, we were able to get, including proximity parking, which is currently being done this year, we were able to do 312 parking spaces. That includes angled, parallel, one food truck parking, several golf cart parking, and then that proximity parking as around the school that's already been done. All these meet the standards for the new parking. So we went from 287 to about 312 for actual parking of vehicles or golf carts and one food truck. So we thought that that was a success on being able to accomplish that. As mentioned, the additional parking is on 12th Street at Port Royal Elementary School. Some of it's already in place. There's another plan to add another 20, and then there's Alano Club. There's also additional parking being done as current projects. Moving on to municipal utilities.
Can I ask a question real quick? Where
Sure.
I'm aware of the school side, where at on the Alano side?
It's right near the stop sign.
Okay.
There's some angled parking there, and then there'll be some parallel parking right in front of the building,
Okay.
which kind of helps with, I think it kind of gets congested with people parking in that area.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it should help with alleviate that.
Okay.
Municipal utilities, there's water and gravity sewer and storm sewer. It's just noted that gravity sewer is limited on Paris Avenue, so that's something that should be looked at in the detailed design. And then water main, if a water main needs to be upsized, that'd be coordination with Beaufort Jasper. The town in this current conceptual design plan does upgrade the drainage along Paris Avenue, which there's a lot of tie-in points from the adjacent neighborhoods and properties into Paris Avenue for the drainage, which would improve that. Drainage section just goes into a little bit more about the different outfalls. Paris Avenue is in flood zone X, so that helps with that issue. Moving on to landscape amenities. I'll let Josh go into a little more detail on that, and then we can also go to an appendix and show some of the pictures of the different amenities as well.
Good evening. I'm Josh Tiller with J.K. Tiller Associates. Could we go to the plan? Might be better to speak from that standpoint. Again, we do go from Rebo down to just past 7th Avenue. One thing that's really unique about this right-of-way is, on the curve, we're between 75 and 77 feet of right-of-way. The bulk, after you get past the curve and you move south down towards 7th Street, it's about an 80-foot right-of-way. So when you subtract out those two drive lanes, 20 feet of drive lanes, that leaves us about 60 feet for pedestrians and landscape and parking, which is really unique for downtown, because typically they're between 50 and 60 feet. We've got 80 to work with. So what we've done, and I think we can
Tell me
go
which
to
page
the.
you go to, and I'll go to it.
You could start with page, I think it's L108, or E101, I'm sorry, which will be further down. I think it's past L108.
That makes sense.
Yeah. We go back up. Keep going, keep going. Keep going. Okay, right there. So we're showing just a typical intersection where we've got the crosswalks. We're showing the 10-foot drive aisles. On-street parking is the standard, the town standard 20 by 9 feet. So we're going to have safe crossings. Some of them will be raised, which will add to the traffic calming. And there's some of those pinch points that Michael mentioned are those darker green areas that those bump outs to allow for a little bit of buffer between the pedestrians and the automobile traffic. If you go back to that, I think that second page, or no, let's go back to the first page. From a landscape standpoint, we start out, one more page. We start out at Rebo. The street standards for this street will be mainly live oak, high-rise live oaks. And then wherever we've got existing canopy, tree canopy, we're going to come in with some understory tree, like a fringe tree, instead of having a canopy tree competing with an existing canopy tree. And then once we hit 8th Avenue, and that's where Town Hall is, and the Town Hall actually exists out in the right-of-way, it pinches down, so there's limited room there, so we've gone in and just to have palm trees in that area, just because they fit better within the right-of-way. Where we've got more right-of-way in the 80-foot sections and parallel parking, we're going to have large landscape strips between the sidewalk and back a curb, and then trees planted along those landscape strips. But as you get towards where we've got some of the angled parking and tighter areas between back a curb and sidewalk, we've got tree grates that allow people to walk within them, but it does protect the root ball of the tree.
Do you have a number, like a number on how many trees,
I
a
do
total
have
number of trees this is?
We've
Looks
got
like a
six.
lot, which is great, but yeah.
Yeah, we've got 16 palms, 25 ornamental French trees, and then 150 of the high-rise live oaks, all within that entire length of the.
Is all that irrigated?
It will be irrigated, yes. One thing that's unique, when we talked about the raised crosswalk, right at the Cypress wetlands, that's going to be a raised paved area, paver area, and that's kind of a major gateway coming into the town off of Rebo. And that'll, of course, allow, for pedestrians to spill out into the street if there's an event there as well.
Do we know how many cars a day going down Paris Avenue? It's a lot. If anyone's going to try to sit at that Parker's and get out,
If we are
just way
calculating
too-
517 at the Sands.
Just the Sands,
I can
500,
imagine-
just
that's at
500.
the Sands, I can imagine what comes through here.
Yeah, okay, I just didn't know if we do that specific, because, yeah.
You were talking about the raised also, and I'm sure you probably have it in there also, because and you did cover the Cypress. And I was thinking also, definitely the school zone,
Right.
in front of the post office where the corner park is. And with the new library coming in there, would that be a feasible location? Because there's limited parking space, and so they're going to be forced to park on the streets.
Right, and I know we show raised crosswalks at the schools, but there's 2 crosswalks there that kind of bookend the school building. We could certainly add it at the library and.
No, that was just a
corner park.
recommendation, a suggestion. I mean,
No,
it's not.
that's it. Well, the library's a new
Whatever
thing.
feasible.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the limited parking space. I think the majority of the people are going to be parking on Paris Avenue and may have to cross over.
And the library's pretty new. I mean, that just came up, so I don't know if that was even in original talks when y'all were getting started.
So, sorry, I didn't, Josh, but we have added
a mid-block crossing directly at Corner Perk and the post office. It's not raised on the plan, but it's been added there, even though it's not an intersection. And then additionally, there will be the traditional intersection that you were shown the close-up of at the library. So you would have to do.
And it doesn't have to be a great raise,
Wouldn't
I guess it's a
necessarily be able to-
crosswalk. Yeah.
There's a mix of traffic calming.
And
Even just the crosswalk itself is going to slow people down.
yeah, the change in
Hopefully-
materials.
And
does a
hopefully
lot
slow
to-
them down.
yeah.
Well, 10-foot lanes too.
But I think they meticulously thought it out also because, he's answered my questions because my concern at first when he talked about reducing the lanes to 10 feet. And with having angle parking, right now, as you said, and you covered that also with angle parking, everyone encroaches over into the opposite lane. And sometimes, you just miss one of those situations. But surprisingly, you added 312 parking space, which increased the number of parallel parking versus the 287. So that addresses that and get rid of my question or my concern, I should say, there. So I think you have meticulously.
It does include proximity parking nearby on adjacent.
Adjacent streets, right, which was like Live Oaks, going towards Live Oaks somewhere in there. That's what,
Near
15th
the
Street?
school.
Yeah. Okay.
If we could I just want to look at all this and get everybody else, let them all look at it. I mean, I know it's, if you were scrolling down, it was broken up. If we could just do kind of just go through it all, we don't have to do all 62 pages, I'm sure some aren't.
Yeah, we
But-
could also go through,
Just so everybody could see it, I know, so if we just need to pull out so we can see the whole.
That's
Okay.
we can
Yeah.
also go through Appendix G, which shows images of what a lot of the material and site furnishings we're proposing.
So we did the public meeting and we used the doc system to
Mhm.
kind of get.
Yeah, yeah.
input from
Yes, sir.
everybody.
Where in this document is appendix G? Is it near the end?
Appendix
G.
G.
Just past C, so.
Should be towards the end,
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
That's towards the end of,
Who's
keep
that?
going up, yeah.
On the left-hand side, it says preferred.
Yeah, I'm just.
Minutes.
Yeah, I believe that's the first page there. That's the start of the exhibit, yeah.
Start here?
Go to the, one more. Yeah. So for benches, trash receptacles, and bike racks, the preferred, based on all our charrettes and community input, the Maglin 1200 series was the preferred look, and we agree. It's got, the character of it's kind of got that industrial port look, but it also has more of a traditional look to it. It's contemporary, but not too contemporary, and we felt it was pretty timeless and a good choice for the street. On down to the next page, as I mentioned, where we've got narrower sidewalks conditions, we're going to use those tree grates. That was the marina, the Ironsmith Marina tree grate was preferred by the community. And then in areas where we've got wider sidewalks, we're going to, in lieu of the tree grates, we're going to have landscape strips that will have various ground covers within it. And then at the crossings, the preferred material were the concrete ribbon curbs with the brick pavers, herringbone pavers within those areas. The next page, those are the preferred trees. At top, the one on top is that fringe tree, which would be the understory tree you'd find under existing canopies throughout the streetscape. And then the high-rise live oaks, which do well in tight spaces. They're less likely to pop curbs and that kind of thing over time. And then, of course, we get into the palm trees as we get to 8th Street and work our way
Closer
down
to the
past
beach.
7th. Next page, these are kind of the typical shrubs you might see throughout the streetscape. Everything from azaleas to podocarpus to loropetalum, saw palmettos. Next page, some more of the ground covers you might find throughout. We like to get seasonal color throughout the year along the streetscape. And then the next page, just some more, depending on shade or sun, you're going to have a different variety of plant material for those ground covers. Next page, we had a lot of pretty good feedback on the idea of art, civic art throughout the streetscape. We talked about burying the power lines. Well, there's going to be some large transformer boxes that are going to be eyesores. Well, they can be, it could be painted, have artists come in and do some artwork on those to help, make them, become a nice amenity to the streetscape. And then typical signage, this isn't necessarily the style of signage, but the type of signage people would like to see out there. The banners, the typical banners you see throughout the year, some major kind of monument type signage, to the directional signage for individual shops along the streetscape, and then any kind of historical kind of information we might want to, historical or natural habitat type information you might want to have along the streetscape. That's all I've got.
I was going to ask if we could just kind of go back to, I think it's page 4 or 5, and we can just go through and just look at it, kind of
Yeah, the plans.
block by block, yeah. I know it's a lot. But yeah, if we could just make this one a little bit bigger.
Yeah, let's go with the color, it'll be most visual.
Oop, oh.
There we go. There's Paris Avenue.
No, I was going to ask, can we get it a little smaller? So the whole thing's just on one page?
Oh, all on one page.
You want to go through each?
Yeah, and then you can, if you scroll down, as I
Page by
remember
page.
correctly, it was just like, basically, this is,
Yeah, we
shrunk it
start at
down,
Rebo
yes.
and go all the way down to 7, so they're in order.
but if we scroll down, please, keep scrolling.
It's the whole thing.
Okay, so this right here, if we could just go through this and kind of with these. So this is from Rebo, just so everyone can see, this gets us from Rebo to the wetlands. Okay.
So we lose that, stop just a second, we lose that little right turn lane right there. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what I'm seeing? That yield lane?
Yeah, currently with that, for up there?
Yeah, we're-
Yeah, where your area is.
Yeah, we're reducing that,
Enforcing it,
So it's a 90 degree right there. There's no merge lane. We've lost, is that what I'm seeing? Okay.
And my only concern about that, though, is, the limited time to turn now. If some folks are distracted at that light when they're making a left turn onto Revolt Road, and you only get 3-4 cars to turn, and then you got 7 cars still stuck back there, and if now you're taking out one turn lane, and if that light doesn't expend longer, then you're gonna have backup to traffic in there.
This was
So
all
I think
based on
there's
the
two
tool
lanes.
study, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this has been recommended in a past transportation study. And also, once you get to full design, you have that ability to work with the county for the signal timing, and that kind of thing to make
But
sure
I
that
see
it's
it
gonna
every
work
day now, as I
appropriately.
said, you get one car that lags, and 7 of us are still stuck at the light, having to wait again another cycle before we can even make a left turn out of there.
Okay.
Well, actually, I think maybe we're creating probably a little bit more space here, because right now with the people accessing Parkers, you get a lack of width through here, and so that's what's causing your issue. You have a lot of people that are turning left that are probably stacking and blocking these 2 other lanes, the through lane plus the right-hand turn. And nobody really should have an interstate interchange at their main intersection, not in your downtown area.
Well, I agree. As I said, my concern, again, is the timing of that light.
Well, that has, and we'll work on that.
Well, we'll
but
work with
that's-
them on that, kind of get that right up.
The whole
the-
stretch
the-
of Rebo will be timed.
The
in
geography
near
of this
future.
intersection is terrible, and that's the biggest problem.
Yes.
That's cool, coastal, and far from ordinary.
It's far from good, too.
Okay. So, and just a real quick, I see streetlights, are we adding streetlights in this
Correct.
plan? Okay.
And they'll match the existing
Yeah, that's great.
standard.
Yeah.
will we, yeah, if we could
Is
just.
it decorative, like an acorn light, or is it the?
Like the shepherd's crook
Okay,
lines. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, so now this gets us from, this is wetlands down to,
That's the raised table right there, in front of
Okay.
Cypress Wetlands.
okay, it's corner perk, okay.
We've
Post
got a
office.
designated crosswalk there at the corner.
Perfect, great,
Post
That's
office,
Corner
yes.
Perk right there.
Right, that's good, right, yeah.
perfect, okay.
That slows traffic too.
And one thing we've done is combine the driveways there. They go into the corner perk. Right now, there's two
Right.
driveways, so we
Yeah.
combined it into one.
And this is the post office.
You're talking about pulling into the corner perk parking lot?
We have
Over there.
entrance and
Yeah.
exit, yeah.
I was bottom out that one.
So,
It's
yeah.
a D. Oh,
So you combine into one is a little bit larger?
Yep.
It'll be two-way, instead of two separate one-way drives, it's one two-way drive.
Okay, I got you.
Without.
In and out in the same,
I think we only eliminated 2 or 3, basically where we thought it would help with pedestrians on crossing driveways. If we thought it was unnecessary, that
Like
was
on
one
the-
location we thought.
On the previous page, there's one of the Parker access points that gets closed off.
Yeah, that one, I'm sure people will have discussion on.
Yeah, probably one closest to the light,
But
yeah.
from our understanding, there's already kind of an issue with people cutting through. So that's what we came up with.
If you go back to that previous page.
yeah, go back. I want to see that.
You see where the canopy is, the gasoline, for the gasoline, the canopy? There's an existing drive just to
Right.
just below it.
Yes.
We've removed, because we saw a lot of cut-through traffic there.
Oh, that's the
People
one
avoiding
that,
intersection.
right across from the Cypress wetland that you're closing on.
Mhm.
Right. And the entrance to the back entrance to the police department, that one.
So if you're coming down Paris, you keep that first one on the
Correct.
right. You get rid of the second one.
Yep, there's a lot of cut through.
And then well, it doesn't matter, but on the other side, you've got 2 over there.
Yes.
Yes.
exit.
Other side
Yeah,
of the parking
those
lot.
stay- same.
okay. Could roll down. Next one, please. Next one, please, okay. So here we are now, this gets us Harris Avenue West.
So we've got another crosswalk in there to the north of West Paris, just because there was kind of a big gap. So we added another one in there.
Yeah.
So that's they're saying, Helena, and then there's the townhomes, boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that one's a tough one. Let me go back, please. Stop. Okay. You have to really pull out there at that one currently.
That West Paris one?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
You gotta stick your nose out there pretty good
Oh,
bit.
yeah, yeah.
the
So
West
this will
Paris
kind of
drainage
create
improvements, we're hoping to correct that sooner.
What were we saying?
There's a uniformity along that side of Paris Avenue and West Paris interfacing with it that doesn't
there by
exist
Anchor
because the old right-of-way used to come in at an angle.
Right.
So like that new house near the corner of 16th and Paris, that looks weird right now, but with this streetscape plan, it will naturally tie into a wide sidewalk and feel like it's set further off the street than it is. So all of that will be taken care of with the sight lines when you're pulling out of West Paris.
Roger that.
Okay.
And you see the road line, center line shift there. That's one of the changes in the
Okay.
more angled.
Yep. And right here, right in front of there's the vet,
Yeah.
Lucky Pelican, the old town hall, okay.
The bottom left there is the food truck parking.
Where's that at?
Very left side of the page.
About 14th.
That's near Anchor Park. It's right at Anchor Park.
Speaking of that, because I notice every week now, the food truck that's servicing Corner Perk and Grits and Griddle stops in the middle of the road and takes up the entire lane. So how is this going to alleviate that?
The delivery truck?
Yeah, the delivery truck, because I'm going to work and that big semi
Yeah.
is sitting
Costco.
sometimes in the center
That's a traffic control
or
issue for the police
sometimes
department.
in the entire right lane.
Yep.
And that's a bad section right there. And I see
I've
that
never
week.
had issues getting around it.
I see that
just
weekly.
normally do.
Yeah.
Well, these are wider, everything's wider now,
So that may help a little bit.
yeah.
All right. All right, here's the elementary school.
And those,
Live
and you see
Oaks
the
Park.
two bookend
I'm gonna zoom in
crosswalks
on
there,
this one a
that's where
little bit.
we've got those raised crosswalks at the school.
Good, yeah.
Okay, so raised crosswalk there, raised crosswalk there.
And we've got that extended bump out there that kind of addresses a lot of the drainage issues that
And you got set
currently experience.
golf cart parking up here on the other side of the park, the left side.
Correct.
Well,
Far left, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Up there on 14th. there.
Oh, yeah, nice. Yeah. Nice touch.
Okay.
I'm gonna zoom back out a little bit.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
4 Island Pizza, or whatever it's gonna be.
Yeah, yeah.
GG's.
One thing that's, the streets,
Italian.
because we have so much space within this right of way, it's going to allow some of these restaurants to have al fresco dining out on the sidewalks. So we've created, good space there for them to use that space for outdoor dining as
That's our
well.
food truck court.
I like the permanent golf cart parking. I think it's a nice touch.
Food truck court.
Yeah, and then, there's other locations where other restaurants wanted to do that. You can see there's a grass strip where they would, work with the town on concrete or pavers or whatever if they wanted to do that. So, like Josh said, that was definitely a big part of putting this together, was having that ability to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you could imagine a 10-foot sidewalk, and then what's the width of the strip between the property line and the sidewalk?
Well, it's either, I think, what was it, it's either 10 or 12
Yeah.
is typical, or 10 feet, and then probably the grass strip would be number 10.
So
depending on what
an
it's
additional
at.
10 feet where we can work with the businesses to utilize that space out in front and potentially not take up any sidewalk doing it.
So I'm gonna see where am I gonna park.
Nice.
Let's see how am I gonna park.
That's 8th right there.
Parallel.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's down. There's nuances, all right.
I'm trying to see how I'm gonna.
Gotcha. Daniel's house.
How am I gonna
And this
park?
is where we are right now.
Okay.
All right.
You see how tight it gets
Yeah.
in this area,
Mhm.
and that's why we went to the palm trees there.
Larger sidewalks and the grass strip help with some of the buildings encroaching into the right of way. Sometimes, some of them have columns where they're right in the right of way,
I think
where
that's good.
you still can allow them to walk underneath the columns, or there's stairs that are in the sidewalk, so kind of gives that ability to accommodate that without changing any of the buildings.
Well, I kinda like that also because that's the entrance or the gateway to the beach. So,
Yeah,
This is ground covers. These little beds is ground covers. Now, you said grass strip. We're not putting any grass in there, are we?
No, it'll be ground coverage. a little
Like,
bit.
whatever you showed us earlier. Because we don't need mowers and all that stuff in there.
Yeah, you're not gonna see any sod out there.
I like it. And this has the public was able to give their input. I mean, everybody weighed in on it, and this is what they wanted.
Well, I
In-
agree.
In the design basis report, we've got all the comments that we received from that.
Good. Thank
And then
you.
the counts as well.
No, and it accommodates a lot of what we talk about, just the world being walkable,
When you start
connectivity and, safety pedestrians, I mean, that's great. We've talked about at our retreat about having Paris Avenue, one of our goals for the year was kind of looking at and working on Paris Avenue being more of a main street, a traditional main street with more, like you said, business activity. And this looks like it'll help, incubate and attract that, yeah. Let
get
people
us an
come.
MASC awards list.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
so,
How you did a job, nice job.
well, great.
Good job.
And then just kind of, a few other things is the power and lighting. As it was mentioned that there's lights throughout the whole Paris Avenue. Working with Dominion Energy on that. There's kind of a conceptual in the design basis report. putting the power underground was part of this and included in the cost. It is very expensive to do that. It's about $5 million per mile to put it underground, and the difference on above ground is $200,000 per mile. So it's very expensive to put it under. So that just making that point.
That would be the bulk of the cost.
Jared
Or
can
not
write
the
a check
bulk,
for
but
that.
a chunk.
It'd be a third of the cost.
Maybe a third of the cost is getting the utilities.
So, and go into the report just to kind of get it to the cost. So these are 2024 construction dollars. So if things continue to go up, there would need to be, that would need to be factored in. This is also on a 30% design level of where these things are going. As a detailed design, there are other things that could come up with utilities,
Yeah.
which there should be some share in that. So if you go to page 19 in the report, Van.
I'm getting there. I don't know which is which now.
Oh, go all the way to the top. That's the report.
Yeah, okay.
And then just keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, I got it.
Keep going. One more.
There you go.
So these are just the main items on a detailed cost estimate based on the 30%. The bottom line is roughly $16 million to do all the improvements, with the power being about $4.5 million. So it is a third of the cost. So aesthetically, with the power underground, that would make a big difference, but that is one possibility to reduce the cost significantly. Changing the way that the concrete's put in between Shell and Tabby isn't going to make as significant of a difference as something like that. So there are other ways to cost or reduce costs. So next section talks about funding. So of course, there's different types of funding that are out there that with this 30% set now, the town can start to kind of go after some of this funding because it's more of, you've thought through the process, you've kind of got a game plan to do it, and now you have a head start to start going after some of this funding and documents to submit for the grant applications.
I want to say too, I mean, we all know we've got a big transportation referendum coming up in November. I don't know if, hopefully Port Royal has some designated funds from that, and if we do, maybe that, can help get after this. So that's something to keep in mind when everyone's voting in November. So.
Yeah, and that's one of the items we have on there is the taps that from DOT that you can get. So really, in conclusion, it's important to understand and for y'all to get any clarification on the actual design basis report and the plans. Next step would be looking at funding opportunities if town council wanted to adapt this as a standard and try to move forward towards this. And then there's other items such as business improvement districts to help fund it. And then lastly, it's mentioned about the power, if that would be an item as well that could reduce costs.
Any questions from council?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. And I'll say to the public, and I'm sure some of y'all, and you just saw this, so just to keep with our agenda that we have, we do have public comment coming up at the end, and we'll open that up. So if anybody has any questions about that, just because, I know you just saw it for the first time, so you probably didn't walk in with questions or comments on it. So when we get to public comment on the council workshop agenda, we'll ask if there's anybody that has anything they'd like to say about what they just saw. So, all right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Up next, interviews. We've got interviews for the short-term rental task force, as well as, okay, and this is, okay, all right. We had quite a few applications for the short-term rental task force, which is what we'll be doing first. some people are here, some people aren't here, so we'll kind of, I guess we will just interview the people that are here. No particular order. Up first, Mr. Les Akers for Short-Term Rental Task Force. If you could get up here and tell us your name, where you live, and a little about yourself, and then I'm sure there'll be some questions. And thank you for your willingness to serve, sir.
Okay, I'm Les Aker, 1514 Old Shell Road. I don't own any rental property, and I don't have any plans to buy any. I've looked at the list. There's a couple of recommendations I'd like to make to the council. The first one is that everybody on this task force should be a 4%er resident of Port Royal, because the crux of this issue is about residency in the town. We have a limited amount of time until the moratorium ends, when you really have to have made a decision. So this task force really needs to have a time limit for 6 months, something like that. And if it can't come to a majority consensus by then, you really need to take minority or majority, recommendations from everybody, because there may be some things that people can't agree on. And the last thing is that I don't think the council has clearly defined what the questions are that you expect this task force to answer, because I've heard each one of you say at different times certain things that you thought the task force might do and are not quite the same. And I've talked to other people who are on the list, of people who want to volunteer, and I know that our questions are not the same. Now, obviously, the first question is, should we have restrictions on short-term rentals? And everything else kind of flows from that. But there's, I guess, 6 to 10 real questions that I think have to be covered by the task force. But I know that that's not the consensus with other people. And I believe you all need to give better guidance about the scope and the timing of what you think this task force needs to do.
Okay. Thank you.
So why do you want to serve?
I believe that we need to address the number and the locations and things of the short-term rentals. And I mean, I walk around town every day, and there are short-term rentals that are being handled very well, and there are short-term rentals that have trash in front of them every time that I walk by and things. So there's some issues there that we need to deal with. And
How do you know what's short-term and what's not? When you walk around, how do you know?
I looked at the treasurer's, the bill site for the county treasurer to see which properties I walk by. Say, right up on the top of the bill, this is a rental property, and then you can tell as you walk around, and the cars change every week, that there's different people living there. Not real hard.
So you're not looking in a list of who's registered, you're looking in a list of?
No, I'm just, as I
Okay,
walk
just kinda
by and I
saying.
said, there's an address, I can look at it online. It says on the bill it's a rental, and I can see that there's an out-of-state plate parked in front of it that's different every week.
So if it's a rental, you're not sure if it's a long-term or a short-term, you just know it's a rental?
Other than I see the cars change, so it doesn't appear to be.
You don't
the
know
s-
if it's long-term or short-term, you just know it's a rental?
Yeah,
Okay,
but I-
that's the question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Last question, what strength would you bring to this committee?
Gosh, that's a hard one,
No,
Daryl.
it's not.
Yeah.
What strength would you bring to this committee?
I think I'm pretty well organized, and I think I could bring a logic to the situation, because I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have a rental. I'm not planning to have a rental. I just live there. And I think we need to look at it from that angle.
Okay, President. Tell me of a time that you worked with a board or a group of people to accomplish something. Because you're going to be working with a group of people,
Yeah.
volunteer group of people. I'm not talking about work, I'm talking about a volunteer group
Oh, I
of
know.
citizens.
No, well,
Give me an example, and maybe what, if there was some problems arise, what was an example of the problem? How did you navigate through that?
Before I moved here, when we lived in Virginia, I was on the HOA board, and I was vice president of the HOA board. And we had just taken over control of the community that had about 1,900 houses in it from the builder. So we had people who were coming in saying, my playground didn't get built, or my water area isn't draining right and the builder hasn't fixed it right. And we had to go through, I, as a member of that board, as the vice president, and mitigate all of those and deal with people who sometimes we could satisfy them and sometimes we couldn't.
I was kind of trying to think, so you feel like if somebody owns a short-term rental, they shouldn't be on the board, even though they are a 4% rental?
No,
They also
no,
own a
no,
4%.
no.
Because you said 4%,
No, I-
they needed to be a 4%.
Well, no, but if they live here in town,
Okay, just so long as they're a resident of this
yeah,
community.
that they,
Okay,
that they
yeah.
really should be a resident of the town. They should not
gonna
live,
affect them as well as
they
us.
shouldn't live in Columbia or Greenville.
I agree.
And,
New York.
and just by virtue of the fact that they own a rental here, be on the board, they should live here
Because they're affected by it.
because they're affected by it, yeah.
And I got a question I'll just ask. It's more of a philosophical question. Do you think that the town should use and adhere to a code-based planning when it comes to development that puts restrictions on usage and
Well,
aesthetics and
I'll
what you
tell you,
can and can't do?
I'm torn, Kevin, because I'm a little L libertarian. I don't belong to the party, but I certainly adhere to a lot of those ideas. And part of that is property rights. But at the same time, there's things that we need to do as a community to make sure that our quality of life is better at this. So there's a hard balance there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I was just going to ask that question of everyone, because that's really what it's going to come down. I mean, that's what we're talking about, is this.
Well, sure, and we're the
codes.
only municipality, as far as I know, who doesn't have a limit on short-term rentals in the county.
Hmm.
And that's certainly driving more short-term rentals to us.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, thank you. Do you have any other questions from council?
Good, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Les. Appreciate you. All right. Up next, Charlie Bray.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Charlie Bray, 806 11th Street. Moved here 2013, bought property here prior to that when we first moved to Beaufort. We renovated 3 homes and then turned around and sold them. I've owned rental property in Port Royal since 2004. Do not own any at the present time. We owned a townhome on 13th Street, took that townhome association away from the developer and established our own HOA. And because I suggested that, I became the president of that HOA, which was, we had some growing pains, but I worked through that. I think that the fact that Beaufort has a short-term rental policy that seems to be working very well, and I know with the task force that you all, or the previous council asked to come up with the ordinance here, they relied heavily on that. I went back today and reread their ordinance and the proposal that we made. I could see some differences, and I know there'll be some pushback on some areas, but that seems to be working very well. And when they limited the number of short-term rentals in their district, they put it at 6%. Our task force recommended 8%. When they recommended 8%, we had at least one district that was already over 8%. And that district, I guess today, is probably 10 or 12%. So we've missed an opportunity by not doing this before. So as Les said, time is of the essence. I believe that there's a value in short-term rentals. We need them. They're used, but they don't have to be in one area. Geographically, Port Royal is very large. Access to that Marine Corps base is farther away from here than it is from a lot of other areas in Port Royal. So it doesn't have to be here. And when you have a street like 8th Street or 9th Street or 15th Street that's got a whole block full of short-term rentals, you lose the neighborhood feel. And that's what people like about Port Royal. I mean, that, and as a resident, I think we need to try to keep the balance. Now, onerous regulations on short-term rental owners are probably not the way to go. Port Royal has a parking issue that Beaufort seems to be able to get around. They ask for monitored fire alarms, which our task force asked for. I don't know if there's going to be pushback on that one. Beaufort also asked for a secondary egress point from their bedrooms, which we did not put in our proposal. And I agree with Les. This council needs to provide direction so the task force knows what they need to do. They have to have some guidelines. And I think you're able to do that. And that'll make a big difference in the speed at which you can come up with something. As Les said, you may not get everybody to agree on everything, but if you have majority opinions and minority opinions, that's when you all are going to have to step in and make a decision. But I admire you for wanting to do this. And once we do establish an ordinance, I'm being positive in saying that, if it has, if there are violations to the ordinance, they have to be enforced. Like, and you were asking, how do you know a short-term rental? They're the ones with the garbage cans out. They're out on Sunday and they're still out 2 days after the garbage has been picked up. Easy to figure it out. And we should be handling that now, as an ordinance violation.
All right, any questions?
I'm going to ask the same two questions on why do you want to serve and what strength would you bring to this committee?
I think I'm a reasonable person. I don't really have a dog in the fight now, except that I live here, and we love Port Royal. We work in Port Royal. We volunteer in Port Royal, and so when you look at who's serving on the boards and commissions, it's citizens. It's not short-term rental owners in Pennsylvania or Columbia or whatever. Or, quite frankly, we don't have a lot of short-term rental owners who live in Port Royal who serve on boards and commissions and volunteer for things. So you need citizens to have citizen input into your volunteer opportunities. We love it. I think we need a balance, and I think I can help with that.
My question, it'll be the same for everyone, so you can be thinking of it, but tell me about a time where you have worked on a volunteer board or commission.
Well, I told you about that HOA.
Okay, tell me another time where you've worked on a board or commission, you worked with people, okay, you had a problem, you tried to resolve it, you came to a resolution. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Charlie.
I know the question,
Okay.
so I'll give you an answer. When I was living outside of Atlanta, very active in the Presbyterian Church, started out as a deacon, became an elder, worked as an elder for years. Believe me, as a church elder, on a vestry at the Episcopal Church, you have to deal with that sort of thing. I also ran a kindergarten program there for 3 years, which I didn't have to deal with anybody except teachers and a budget, but I did that.
I was just trying to clear with Les about the 4%. So,
Uh-huh.
I think we all agree with that. So.
Yeah, so and then my question is the same, like I said, philosophical question. Do you think that the town should use and adhere to a form-based code that does put limits and restrictions on usage for certain properties and aesthetic looks for certain properties, whether it's residential or commercial?
I don't know. I think properly done, that could be there's a benefit to that. It probably can be overreached also. That may be over my pay grade.
Okay.
Volunteers don't get paid, baby.
All right. Any more questions? All right. Thank you, Charlie.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Up next, Miss Debbie Ball.
Hello,
How are you?
Mayor and council people.
Debbie.
I'm Debbie Ball. I live on 917 15th Street. My husband and I live there. We've had 2 short-term rentals for 5 years since we've moved here. I can tell you I love hosting people coming into the area. I take pride in what I do with my short-term rentals. I work very, very hard at making sure that it accommodates what everybody's looking for in visiting this area. Most of the renters are military coming in to see their graduates on Paris Island. So I love meeting them and seeing their graduates come. I love being able to encourage them to go to all the restaurants in Port Royal and go see the different shops that are in Port Royal. And they are eager to go and really spend their money here while they're visiting. And I find that several people that have stayed at our places have ended up buying houses or building in this area. And I also have people that live in the area that when they have family coming in, they don't have enough room in their house, so they will call and have their family stay in the short-term rental. The reason that I would like to be on this task force is I just want to be there to answer questions. People have questions about what is entailed in having a short-term rental. I talk to all the neighbors around me, make sure that if there is ever any questions or any problems, call me. I give them my phone number. I have rules all over the place. So if there is any issues whatsoever, I have rules tacked everywhere. I have them in the correspondence before, while I'm sending it to them. So if there's any issues whatsoever, I'll add another rule, and to have them follow it. I am hoping that on the task force, if there's concerns or questions, that I'll be able to answer those, try to think of all sides and be reasonable about finding solutions to the problems, because I think there could be an easy solution to most of the concerns that people might have. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. Mrs. Miles?
Well, you've answered the first one, but we'll clarify on what are your strengths that you would bring to this commission?
Well, I think I'm pretty organized, maybe overboard. So, since I have all the rules that I put out there, but I feel like I can honestly try to look at everybody's input and understand why they're coming with their concerns. I'd like to be able to see if I can resolve whatever questions or issues they might have and find facts to be able to not just put an opinion out there, but just be able to have facts that we can find, that we can come up with reasonable solutions. So,
Talk about a time that you worked on a volunteer board or commission. Talk about.
I don't think I have. I'm
Okay.
very involved in the church, and I work with helping a lot of the people counseling in that way, but not a board.
Okay.
So,
Same question, just kind of, do you think that the town should have adhere to the plan-based code, where it does, like as we just were talking about it with the Paris Avenue, it does put restrictions and limits on certain types of usage and also certain types of designs and looks, and that's on residential and commercial, so.
well, I like the way the town has been running it. I think that short-term rentals keep their property up very, very well. You don't find too many of them that don't, because if they get a complaint, VRBO, Airbnb will dock them, and they won't get as much traffic. So they need to keep up their point system. So I think if there's any issues, that the town has a lot of good regulations that we can address it with the town, address it with the owners, address it with the neighbors, and resolve a lot of issues that way without having to make a lot more regulations, so.
I agree with that point. I see it a lot. I know we can walk around and see rental properties, but I feel like short-term rentals, they have to be on top of their game. It's the long-term rentals that kind of tend to not cut the grass or not do this or not do that, but the short-term rentals, they're turning that thing over. And you got to keep it looking good.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, Miss Wendy Zara.
Well, they all changed when we got the.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Wendy Zara. I live at 1012 14th Street. I was on the original short-term rental task force, so I'm very familiar with those recommendations. And I have a pretty good idea. I have a feeling what will happen, since there will be a lot of new people on here, we'll have to recreate the wheel, because they're going to need to think about the same things we did that they haven't. But I do personally believe that we do need a cap on short-term rentals. There is a reason why all the different jurisdictions around us have short-term rental ordinances and have caps on them. And some of the reasons are things like it takes away the affordable housing in a community. Families can't live there. These also need safety regulations. They're a lodging, they're a business, and they need to have fire department monitoring and things like that, diagrams and all that kind of stuff. So I would really like the town to look at this again and reconsider it, and see if now we can make everybody happy, which I know is impossible, but we can try.
We can serve them ice cream. That's what we can do.
Serve
That'll
ice
make 'em happy.
cream. Are you going to do the serving?
I need to.
Yeah, if it makes everybody happy.
Right.
And I've been on a bunch of boards. I'm currently chairman of the Planning Commission. I'm on the board of the Housing Trust. I was on the board of the Chamber for a number of years, et cetera, et cetera. So,
I know you've served on a lot of boards and commissions. And
Yeah.
So I'll hold my question on that, so,
okay.
thank you.
Councilman.
You answered the first, and again, what strengths would you bring to this commission?
What strengths would I bring?
Yes.
Well, I have a lot of experience serving on volunteer boards. I also know the ordinances of the town itself pretty well. I've lived here for a while, and serving on the MPC first and now on the Port Royals Planning Commission has given me a lot of insight into the current ordinances. And I am pretty organized. If you looked at my office, you wouldn't think so, but
You're not OCD, are you?
I know which pile things are in.
That's what's important.
Just want to
Yeah.
be consistent, that's all. Just want to be consistent.
Any questions?
No.
And then, same question, just kind of like I was asking everybody, do you think that the town should have and adhere to a form-based code when it comes to planning that puts limits on, usage, certain usages in certain areas and
Well, are you
certain
talking
designs?
specifically about a form-based code, which is a type of zoning ordinance versus a Euclidean type?
I'm asking the philosophical question because what we're getting to is here is, property and property rights and telling
Right.
people what they can and can't do and
Right.
just kind of asking your thoughts on that because as we know, we do have a code that says, you can't build this kind of building,
Right.
this kind of business next to this business. The code, the way I see it, creates a lot of predictability that benefits all of us because if you have a house when it sells, you know that what can and cannot be built next to
Right.
it, what it can look like, how tall they can be. So we put restrictions all the time on what can
Right.
and can't be done. And I guess I'm just kind of asking your thoughts on that. Should we
I-
do that?
I absolutely believe that we need to have zoning and use ordinances. Really, they're a matter of, when you look at it overall, public safety and keeping the neighborhood compatible uses and all that. The form-based code that we have allows a number of uses in the same transect, unlike the old-fashioned ordinances, and it depends on design a lot, and, people can debate whether they think that's the right way to do it, but,
Okay.
okay?
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have one because originally when I saw your thing, it was for the Regional Housing Task Force. And I know you've served on that with us before, so I didn't see you had put in for short-term rental. So I guess I was a little confused.
Well, they sent Lisa, I think, sent out emails to all the people that were on the old one,
Okay.
asking if they would be interested in serving again, and I said, sure.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure we.
Yeah, yeah.
asking
And the
you the right
Housing
thing.
Trust, I actually am the county's representative on the Housing Trust.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure because I just saw that and I was like.
Okay.
wait a minute.
What is she doing here?
No, I just looked confused because when I went through them the other night
Yeah.
doing my homework, it wasn't there, so.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Definitely
check.
have your
Okay.
hands full.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Wendy.
All right, up next, Miss Barbara Berry.
She's short-term too? Somebody needs to update us.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Barbara Berry. I live on 906 8th Street, and I served on the board, the previous one that we looked at, the short-term, years ago. So I feel like I could bring those ideas. We spent about 18 months on that, and it was, we learned a lot, and I would like to be able to serve with those folks again. I do want to say everything we've heard has been wonderful, and you're going to have a tough decision because the candidates are great. Everyone wants the best for this community. I just want to tell you about my street. I live on 8th Street, and right now there are 6 full-time residents. We have a total of 5 short-term rentals right now on that street. 1 long-term that I know of. And then there are 3 homes that are being rehabbed, and I've talked to the owners, and they plan to do short-term rentals. So my street is going to be impacted by this. I mean, we've got more short-term than permanent residents. I'll echo what Ms. Ball said. The people who come and stay at the short-term rentals that are directly across from me are wonderful people. The properties are kept up great. I always speak to them, whoever comes in. I've met incredible people from all over. You wouldn't believe people like from Minnesota just come to sit, come to Port Royal. People hear about it and just come. So it's amazing, and I'm not against short-term rentals. What I am against is losing my community. I want to know my neighbors, and that's what I think I have to bring to it, is that I want to stand up for those community members who want to have the sense of community that I think we deserve. And that's pretty much it.
Okay.
You know?
All right, thank you.
Councilman? Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I know why you want to serve again. Clarify, what strength would you bring to the commission?
Well, I taught high school for 32 years, so I wrangled, 135 kids each day, and I love teenagers. And adults are fun too, not as much fun as high schoolers, but I think that's a strength I would bring, and that I'm very open-minded, and I want to see everyone's point of view. I love having short-term rentals because my family has used them, friends have used them. We need the short-term rentals. They're wonderful. We just don't need them taking up every street. We need a cap desperately so that it's spread out and that I don't lose my sense of community. I really envy my neighbors who, when they get together, do a street thing, it's everybody on the street, whereas mine's only the 6. They gather around my dining room table. I want more than that.
My turn. I agree with a lot of things you said, that, in echoing what Debbie said about the short-term rentals got to look good. So you're coming out and you see it.
Oh,
You see it
absolutely.
firsthand, and they have to keep it up looking good.
Absolutely.
And I hear you when you talk about losing sense of community. I'll ask the question again, and I know you're a high school teacher, and I know you worked on the other short-term commission we had, because I too attended almost every meeting
Yeah,
of that
you
back
did.
then, if you
You
remember
sure did.
correctly.
Mhm.
And I want to know about a time where you have worked with a board as a volunteer board, because we've got to collaborate with one another. We got to be respectful of one another, and I just remember back then, I don't know if we were real respectful. I mean, I'll give you an example of a time where we had to call the police on somebody. That happened. So the collaboration is important and being respectful of each other. I think that's important too. So tell me about a time where you worked with the board or commission, maybe had a problem, how you kind of navigated through it.
Well, I did work on the Historic Preservation Board. We never met the entire time, so we didn't have a chance to collaborate. We never met.
I like those boards.
Yeah, so that was unusual.
Y'all got a lot accomplished.
I guess nothing needed to be done, but we handled it.
Well, good.
I can't say I belong to other boards. I have run vacation Bible school programs for 150 kids.
Sure.
Again, that's where my passion is, children and teenagers. And
How good are you at herding cats?
I can do that too. I think when I worked on the short-term rental board before, it was a large group of people, and I remember listening to everyone, and that there was you have to be willing to hear everybody's viewpoints, and then think about what is best for our community.
Right.
And it's not good to have any street more short-term than permanent.
I like what you said, listening to people.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. That's all I've got.
Same question. The town, right now we do
Yes.
have a code. What's just kind of your thoughts on that? Is
Well,
it
I
important for us to
don't
have
think y'all should tell us what kind of flowers to grow in our yard. That should not be, what color our house should be. I was surprised when I asked, when I have an old home, 135 years old, I thought there would be a rule on that. No, y'all said I could paint it purple if I wanted to. So I like that because we should have that freedom here. All the zoning rules that NOAA keeps up with and that keeps us all attuned to, that's what is important. The things to make us look uniform the way that we want it to look like. So I'm good with it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
All right. Keep on rolling. Up next, Mr. David Fletcher.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me. So, I am not a full-time Port Royal resident. I'm a part-time Port Royal visitor. I bought a house on 10th Street about 8 years ago. My wife and I came down to check out Beaufort as a potential retirement community, and we happened to come down here on the day of the Soft-Shell Crab Festival and said, no, Port Royal. And a few months later, we bought the house on 10th Street. We plan to retire here if I can ever get her to retire. In the meantime, we operate as a short-term rental. Some of the things I've learned about this is, as other people have said, it is driven entirely by reviews and referrals. If you don't maintain your property, if you don't, if mechanically it's not working well, if it's not clean, if the grounds aren't kept up, you get a couple of bad reviews, and that affects you very deeply. So because we're not local, we use a professional property management company, and that's very, very helpful in our case. I think that I also served on the last short-term rental commission or task force. And I think that there are a couple of very interesting issues here. First of all, I completely understand of wanting to maintain the character and the nature of Port Royal. That's why we're here. That's why we came here, because we fell in love with Port Royal. But by the same token, there are property rights issues, right? So if there's a cap, and I also believe there should be a cap, but that's subject to further discussion. That puts restrictions on some people at the, so for example, if my area is at the cap and my next door neighbor wants to start a short-term rental and they can't, they now don't have rights that I do. That sort of thing. And it's all subject to discussion. I think that our experience has shown that the people who've come and stayed at our property have enjoyed Port Royal. Enjoyed the restaurants, enjoyed the shops. A lot of them, excuse me, we have a guest book, of course, and a lot of them say, we can't wait to come back, and a lot of them have come back. And I'm not sure if anyone has bought property in Port Royal, but a lot of them have come back 2 or 3 times. So I just, I think that it generates a lot of interest and income. And I think all in all, it's a good thing for Port Royal, but there is a balancing act here. And that's what we went through in the last go-round. That was really kind of off the top of my head, so if I wasn't clear, ask questions.
Good job, sir. So, Councilman Owen?
Why do you want to serve again, and what strengths do you bring to this commission?
I have no idea why I want to serve again. But I bring 40 years of commercial real estate, property management, and development experience. I bring my experience from a few years ago on the task force. And I have an ability to see the view from 30,000 feet. What does this decision mean for the town as a whole? How is this going to affect this? How is this going to affect this? And that sort of thing. It's kind of what I've done for 40 years until I retired, finally.
Thank you.
So, same question, and I'm sorry, I don't remember you, Dave, from the
That's all
previous
right.
time. Were you on Zoom? Or were you in
Sometimes.
person? Okay,
Sometimes. I
okay.
was here in person for many of them, but I was also on
Okay.
Zoom sometimes.
I'm sorry. So other than that board, tell me about another time that you worked with a board or a commission and talk about maybe the collaboration, the communication.
Oh, I will, but first, let's talk about that board, if you don't mind.
No problem.
So that board, I always thought was interesting because it encompassed the entire spectrum, right? From people who wanted no short-term rentals to people who wanted the Wild West. And we worked for 18 months, and we came up with recommendations that nobody liked, nobody loved, but everyone could live with. And that's what collaboration is about. And, I think we were, at the end of the day, pleased, frustrated, tired, but pleased. Beyond that, in my professional career, I've worked with condominium boards, I've worked with boards of directors of laboratory buildings, of, multiple use, specialty use properties. And it's trying to strike a happy medium and hearing what everyone's problems are, everyone's interests are, everyone's concerns are, and then trying to come up with a solution that benefits everyone to the best of its ability.
Thank you.
Great. Last question, same question. Just kind of, again, do you think it's important that the town have and adhere to a code, form-based code that puts restrictions on certain types of usage in certain areas, certain types of aesthetics when it comes to development, residential and commercial?
Commercial, certainly. Residential, yes. I think there's a certain amount of, obviously the basic life safety standards have to be met. And I think the town already does that. But yeah, there should be certain aesthetic requirements. And I agree. You shouldn't tell us what flowers to plant. But, if we're going to enhance the character of the town, I think that has to be met.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Fletcher. Any other
Of
questions
course.
from council?
No, sir.
All right.
Thank you, David.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you, sir. And thank you to all of y'all. I know that takes a lot to get up here and speak and answer questions, and thank you for that. So that is it from the short-term rentals. We do have a few more applicants. Unfortunately, these are the ones, they weren't unable to be here, so thank you for the ones that are here. Next, we have more interviews for the Historic Preservation Commission. Maybe they'll have a meeting. And up first is Mr. Charles Russo for Historic Preservation Commission.
Good evening, council,
Yes, sir.
everyone. Charlie Russo. I almost feel like an outsider because I think everyone's on a numbered street. I'm over on Ladies Island Drive,
Yep.
so on the outskirts of Port Royal. In the, I always draw River Club.
Yes.
So I've got 96 units in there. This is not historic. We're talking about the last committee. They're very interested in what the town's decision makes because a lot of these are investment properties.
Okay.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about historic preservation. Why am I here? Why am I interested? I was drawn to Port Royal, visiting family. Came down about 5-6 years ago. The people of the town, the topography, the climate coming from New York, and lastly, the history of the whole Port Royal Beaufort area. I mean, you just cannot find that anywhere else. So, hence my interest in the Historic Preservation Committee. My experiences are 30-plus years of construction management in New York, large commercial construction, as well as a lot of heavy civil. Looking at the plans for downtown brought me back to, oh, this is exciting stuff, looking at all the tree plans. And so I'd like to be involved in that aspect of it, any kind of modernization while preserving history. I've worked on the World Trade Center, worked on a series of parks in Brooklyn, where I've been on both ends of, we have the contract, do the construction, and I've watched us tear up history, and it's like, well, I shouldn't be doing this, but it's not in my... But on the flip side, I've also worked on a number of projects, federal courthouses, old train stations, old psychiatric hospitals that were historically preserved, and it's always very interesting to preserve history, because once it's gone, there's no bringing it back.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Any questions, Mr. Councilman Owens?
Not being a resident of Port Royal.
I am currently a full-time resident, yes, sir.
He was just saying he just doesn't live in the village.
You just don't live in, okay.
I'm just not in downtown Village.
Well, that nullifies my question.
I'd love to have a path through the Naval Hospital so I could.
There you go.
I'm just trying to get a sidewalk out front.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can let you walk here if we get that sidewalk and be comfortable.
Councilman Ashmore?
No, I'll say this, looking at your experience as a project manager, I see you around town, I see you at street music, I see you at festivals, I've seen you in here with the auxiliary.
Yes, sir.
And I've seen you just throw yourself into the community. I think you're a great candidate for the job, so I appreciate your willingness to serve, so, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, sir.
And you kind of answered it, but I'm just going to ask everybody, why is historic preservation important?
Again, biggest thing is once it's gone, it's gone. There's no bringing it back. And I think the history of this town is what draws a lot of people here, especially being the military town that we are. Kind of history goes hand in hand with those that are interested in the mystery, into history.
And we're
So,
reminded of that every day when we hear those truck and those vehicles.
absolutely.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Russo.
Thank
Again,
you.
Thank you.
Reiterate what Councilman Ashmore says. You've applied for a couple boards and been in here, so that's great.
Thank you all.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Up next, Miss Candace Ellis.
Good evening, everybody, and
Yes, ma'am.
thank you, Councilmember and Mayor, for having me and listening to me. I have been kind of a lifelong supporter of history. I have a...
Where do you live?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Resident.
Yes, I do. 88 Gautier Place in Port Royal. I have a degree in art history, and that's where it started. I went to the University of South Carolina, and I have been a history lover ever since. In the middle of my 30s, I decided that I needed to get a job that actually paid me something. So I, after getting an MBA, I went and worked for American Express Financial Advisors for many years. In that, I learned a lot of leadership skills. I worked for the CIO, and I helped him run his team of 5 vice presidents, unit vice presidents. So I know what pick and choosing battles looks like. I know I have a good idea of what issues need to be prioritized over others. I'm a good prioritization. But I'm also a long-term thinker. My husband and I moved in 2011 to Edisto. We lived on Edisto Island for 10 years. And we recently moved about 15 months ago to Port Royal. And we moved for two reasons, access and involvement. Access because Beaufort County offers all the things that most of us endear ourselves to everyday life. And the involvement piece is interesting. There are plenty of opportunities to get involved on Edisto, and I was. But the community at large, with respect to cohesiveness and prioritization around community efforts, is very different. Edisto is very rural, and that really hit our buttons for a lot of different reasons. We had a full-time consulting business that my husband still is kind of part-time, kind of winding down around leadership and people involvement. And so I thought this is a great mix. It serves us personally, and it also serves us from an interest standpoint and also a skills standpoint. I had volunteered for another commission here, but after thinking about this, I have decided that I need to take this in a path that best suits my interests and my passion. I'm a long-term thinker. I look at things from a very strategic point of view, but I also listen and I talk. The time that I was on a volunteer board, I was on the HOA committee on Edisto. Pick and choose your battles among your neighbors. Right? That is so important. Pick and choose your battles, listen, and not know that you don't have to agree and you don't have to disagree. Do what's the best for everyone. And that cohesiveness, that collection of ideas and thoughts is very important. I recently have been interested in the museum, Port Royal Museum. I am a hawk for research and information, and so I'm just kind of drooling to kind of see what is there and what else can be done with it. But I also think that the Historical Preservation Commission has an opportunity to look at the growth of Port Royal, the strategic plan, and say, okay, what role do we need to have? How does our role change with time, with money, with interest, and with commitment? And it's about culture, it's about heritage, and it's not just about old buildings. It's about how those buildings fit into the whole identity of Port Royal. And I think that's a viewpoint that I believe is healthy and that would generate more communication between all the other commissions and the committees within Port Royal and also the citizens of Port Royal to really be part of that cohesive understanding of who we are as a community and what we have to offer people in understanding the history of this area and also understanding our current vitality and why you want to be here. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of answered it, but just because I asked everybody, so why is
Yeah.
historic preservation important?
It is important because it is a reality. It is part of our history. And it is something that there's still a lot yet to be unearthed. And that unearthedness about it, that ability to opportunity to go in and unearth some things in order to really truly understand what the charge is for the commission is exciting to me. It's important.
Any questions?
You know, I was just mesmerized by her her story. Sounds like a historian. Yes.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Michelle.
Have a good
Absolutely.
evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
Up next, William Entwistle. Did I say that right?
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
You can call me Bill.
Bill.
Good
How
evening,
bad did I
everyone.
say your last name?
Entwistle. You did it right.
Entwistle, okay.
Yeah. And congratulations on that profile piece in Beaufort Lifestyle. It's
Thank you.
excellent.
I did not know they were going to do that.
And update, from reading that, I just want to let you all know that, and I know some of you have all been through the program. I just was interviewed Monday night for the leadership program with the chamber.
Great.
So
That
fingers
is
crossed.
awesome.
So I'm very excited about, was it last Wednesday or Wednesday before, I attended the Historic Preservation Committee meeting, and I sat down and I was reading through the minutes before they were getting started, and I thought I was reading a typo, because the first agenda item was approving the minutes from the last meeting, which was December 2020. And I was like, they haven't met since December 2020? And they said there had been no issue since then.
Where do you live?
I live at the Preserve, sorry, currently live at the Preserve, yeah. Haven't bought property yet, we're still selling the place
Port Royal, that's all.
in New York, yeah. So I live in Port Royal. And the person who was presenting his issue that day was, he's remodeling the Appleton House, and he was presenting his plans, and they were very well thought out of, and he even brought his designer with him, and and it got approved, and it's the kind of thing that I like to be involved in, and like to do research and learn and listen and see what should be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, and from me, same question. Why is historic preservation important?
Well, it's like the two previous candidates said, it's history, and if we forget history or lose history, we don't go forward. We make the same mistakes. Nothing moves forward, but you have to keep the integrity of the place you live.
Yes, sir.
Question?
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank
Bill,
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think it's great because, yesterday I met two individuals on the streets that formerly worked at Blue Channel.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you very much. We will be discussing these later on in the agenda. That's a lot. I appreciate, thank you so much for everybody for hanging in there. I don't know if we've ever done 9 interviews for boards and commission in one meeting, so thank you very much for
How
being a
many
part
are
of
we
it.
looking for on the historic preservation? And how many on the other? Historic preservation?
2 on
Two.
historic
Two.
preservation. Sorry, I
Okay.
apologize for that.
And we're
5
on 5.
on that.
2 on that, how about it on the?
5.
That's 5 on this here?
Yes, sir.
And how many did not show up tonight? Were unable to attend tonight, I'm sorry?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah.
6 didn't show.
So there's a candidate pool of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12? Is that right? For 6?
Yes, 12, right.
12 for 5, you said 5 spots, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Everybody good?
Good.
Okay, up next, council briefing.
All right, Rural Problem Sewer Project, we've got a little bit of a credit coming our way dollar-wise, but I'm going to be checking into the capacity credit issue, which I've asked Mike to look into, which we will be dealing with. Speed humps, I think we had a little bit of an update on that. I think we were looking for some additional locations and maybe better position those. We're still having issues with the DOT in terms of getting to the threshold for installation on those that are on DOT roads. However, the ones on our roads, we finalized the map and we're moving forward with them. Perfect. Shadow Moss Trail, not much new there. Spanish Moss Trail.
Shadow Moss.
I cut and pasted this, but I'm sorry.
You're trying to see
We're
if-
correcting that.
Hey, are you trying to see if we're paying attention?
Yeah,
still?
exactly.
That's what I thought.
No, that's another trail that Safe Harbor stopped. Anyway,
Just wanted to be sure. Yes.
West Paris Avenue, bids received. Obviously, we'll be discussing this a little bit later for the, with Joco Construction. We're in the middle of design improvements for the villages. We've got the kind of the numbers involved for that and the kind of the scope of work, but obviously the impact of West Paris and the dollars there will impact that project as well. We just had a very in-depth discussion of the Paris Avenue streetscape. We can relive that if you'd like again. No? Okay, good. 12th Street school parking. I think we've got everything signed and squared away on easement, so we're good to go. The other side of 12th Street, I think we're also there as well, correct? And ready to do the installation of the other side of 12th Street. All right, good. We are working on the drainage analysis for the Casablanca drainage improvements. That's a $1 million plus project, correct, Michael? In total? Just say yes. Okay, good. No, it's actually phased, and there will be several different parts of that, but that one is going to be pretty more involved because it does require some interface with the reserve departments and how we connect to the system. So that will be the challenge which we had with our Royal Palms sewer project, but hopefully we'll overcome that. Made some inroads there. RIS Town Stormwater CIP Master Plan. I think we have signed the contract with you guys and have executed it.
We just received today the thumbs up from RIA.
Perfect. And just as a little update, in the middle of this entire process, we were assigned new representatives to interface with that organization that have come up with some additional things that we should be doing despite the fact that they've already approved the stuff that we've submitted. So we're educating them on some of those things. That's old under the Paris Avenue Streetscape CDBG grant application, so we can bypass that. Sanitary sewer, Rebo Road master plan. Obviously, we completed that conceptual plan. There is a grant opportunity that I think we may have that was forwarded to us that had to do with adjacent improvements with the defense communities. And I think this might be a possibility for potential funding. So I think we may float this project and sewer improvements on Rebo Road through that. Okay, good. Blythe has completed the paving, but from what I understand, the permanent markings are happening within a week or so. 2 to 3 weeks. What you see now is just temporary paint. I know that some people had some concerns about the quality of it, but because we're doing the thermo, we wanted to get something down on the new asphalt so people would know where to stop and those sorts of things. So that's getting cleared up. Short-term rentals, obviously I just included this in here. Obviously we just held a series of interviews, so we'll get that task force teed up. Safe Harbor, nothing really new to report on that front, other than we have a Board of Zoning Appeals hearing sometime in June that we're finalizing the dates on. We continue to monitor any activity. Obviously, there's no activity going on at this time on the property. So I think we've had an impact there, and we'll see how everything moves forward.
So again, no activities going on?
No. No activity.
As far as construction.
Construction.
They're still
Right,
moving,
right,
they're still
yeah,
moving
yeah,
boats
yeah,
and all
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah. They're still working boats.
But they're not building docks here for other locations?
No, they're all in
No,
Charleston.
nothing right now. Shrimp Dock, I just kind of, I got an update from the engineer that handled that for us. OCR has issued their permit modification to Safe Harbor. They expect the core permit to Safe Harbor next week. Obviously, once that core permit is in hand, we will finalize our Shrimp Dock plan based upon the approved design that y'all provided input on. Then we'll have to deal with some of the ownership issues on the adjacent properties. Obviously, if you cross a property line out into the waterway, you have to get permission from the adjacent property, or in this case, it would be Fish Camp and Shell Ring. So I think we'll be able to work those issues out. Shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. And let me see what else he had. We have to repair and encroachments. We'll have to deal with all this lingo, and then we will engage the Corps to extract the shrimp dock from the Safe Harbor permit, and it will be our own permit modified to accommodate the town. So if you recall, when the original permit was submitted by the State Ports Authority, it included not only their marina, but the construction of what we call the backwards F. So we'll be fixing that as well. All right. The updated status list is in your folder for capital. One of the more important things is this transportation referendum, and I received today, and I included in the folders the email from Jared Fralix giving an explanation of which one of those scenarios they went with. And I think they've gone with the one that scales it back to, I think, just a little bit over $1 billion. I think it's $1.06 billion. And within that, and just more importantly for us, obviously Reba Road is still included in that scope, but they did scale back the municipal dollars. Initially was, I believe, was it 60 and 60?
It was 60, 60, and then
60
we
to Hilton
split.
Head, 60 to Bluffton, and 60 to north of the Broad, including Beaufort and Port Royal and northern Beaufort County. Those have been scaled to 30, 30, and 30. So we'll have to take a look at that scope. Like I said, it was finalized today. And we got the presentation, so it's in your folders, and we'll take a little bit.
But still nothing specified for, we're still just
No,
north of the
we're
Broad?
still north of the Broad. Legal, nothing new to report other than everything that's going on with Safe Harbor. Tree review, I think we're going to have a discussion of that particular ordinance, or you've got a draft of the ordinance.
Yeah, I'm prepared to.
Which we will discuss here shortly. And then finally, Naval Hospital sidewalk. We got even more clarification that the deed has been approved, and so we're about as close as you can get to finally building 300 feet of sidewalk that we've ever been before.
300 feet.
That's what I got.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions for the town manager?
Not this time.
Jim?
Nope, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And again, thank you to staff on all the work on the budget. I know that's a lot, that's a heavy lift, and so thank you for getting us to where we're at. Up next, review agenda for our council meeting, which is June 12th, next Wednesday.
All right. Let me get that, the copy you have in writing on it. Yeah, grab it. Make sure I got that. All right, perfect. All right. So, first readings, 2024-12. This is the authorization to convey access road property to facilitate sidewalk construction. This is I'm not sure about the length of the property of this sidewalk to be constructed, but it's located at 806 16th Street. I believe they'll have a map of the location in your folders, and the sidewalk request is in compliance with the sidewalk construction policy. Next is 2024-13, an ordinance transferring the authority for conducting municipal elections to the County Election Commission, repealing Section 6-8 Municipal Election Commission within Chapter 6 Elections, and amending Section 6-9, 610, 611, and Chapter 6 Elections of the Town of Fort Royal Code of Ordinances. We've had a little bit of lack of interest in participation in the Municipal Election Commission, so we're deferring, like the other municipalities, and allowing the county to manage our municipal elections. They're well-versed, they're well-staffed, and they're capable of taking it on. The next one is 2024-14. This is, potential modifications to the tree ordinance. I'm going to defer to Noah on that one to give you just kind of a quick overview of what those things are, and I will pull that up real quickly if I can. This thing?
Yeah, the PowerPoint.
Yeah. There we go.
Hi, buddy.
Hey.
Been waiting with bated breath for almost 2 hours for this moment.
You ready?
Yeah.
Don't blow it.
Your time to shine.
Okay, so y'all have asked when the new tree ordinance was adopted last spring, it was asked that staff take a look at it at 1 year for potential amendments, make sure things are running smoothly, and any possible changes that need to be made for better efficiency and those types of things. So I've got about 5 slides here. The first slide is general, and the rest will focus in on a few hot topics. So just looking at these general amendments on this slide, the first of which would be to slightly change some language revolving around the requirement to retain existing trees. Currently, the standard is that you make every effort to save every individual tree and all stands of tree. I feel like that doesn't reflect the rest of the ordinance. So I've altered that to focus on specimen and landmark trees, but that does allow discussion at site review for saving certain stands of trees in open space and the like. Separating the requirements for site development permits and commercial building permits from residential building permits. This is for existing single-family lots, whether it be in a subdivision or downtown. We've had some discrepancies in the requirements and the stringency on individual homeowners or folks that are building a home. And so just wanted to separate that out, make some specific requirements. New single-family subdivisions require a major subdivision and a site development permit, and they still fall under that stricter set of requirements for site development permits. This next one, clarifying when a tree survey needs to be verified by an arborist. That's also reflecting that single-family lot requirement. Basically, we have situations where if there's a discrepancy on size or species, it's an individual lot, it's a family building a house, we'll send our arborist out to verify that rather than forcing them to hire an arborist to do it for them. Clarifying protections when low-impact development techniques are approved within the drip line of a landmark tree. The ordinance allows you to compact the soil to a certain percentage, I believe 20, within that drip line of the tree. We did that to allow creative design that might save the tree, but allow that space around the tree to be used by the homeowner or business or whatever it might be. So if you can imagine, a house that has a large live oak a lot straight in the center of the lot, they have that ability to courtyard around that tree and maybe do some decking around it. We've kind of expanded that where they can submit design alternatives that do some decking around a tree or something that utilizes that space. So I just added a couple of language items in there that clarify that we're open to you submitting something to us and we'll review it and see if it can be done. That would include the town arborist and architect as well. Make replacement planting rates more feasible. So this isn't fees, this is just the replanting amounts. Currently, we're at, you remove 5 inches of tree, you have to plant a single tree. That was an initiative that was kind of aggressive, I believe, by the group that worked on the ordinance. I think we need to scale that back a little bit because currently it's not feasible on the majority of the sites in town that I've looked at in the past year to meet that replanting requirement on site, which means it's really, in addition to the fees that we have right now, another added cost, because if you can't meet those replanting requirements, you have to pay into the tree fund as well. So really, we're looking at the fees we already have, plus it's almost like a backdoor additional fee or fine. So what I'm doing there is basically reverting back to the previous ordinance, which based on the significance of the tree, you have to plant a percentage of the inches that you removed. So 50 for landmark, 33 for specimen, 24% for anything over 8 inches.
So let me ask you, because right
Sure.
now, under the last year ordinance, it was what, replant or pay or fine or?
Yeah, under the previous ordinance, you are required, you were able to either replant or pay.
Okay.
Under the current ordinance, you have to do both. Got some comments on that coming up in this too. It's kind of an in-between, so I can get into that as well when I get to the slide on fees. Okay. Mitigation for single-family lots and significant trees that fall due to natural catastrophe. There was no provision in the ordinance for trees that fail because of a natural catastrophe. We have folks that call and say, a tree fell during the storm. I'm terrified you guys are going to make me pay for it. What do I need to do here? Most of the time they're willing to plant something to replace that and start to fill that canopy back in. And so I'm proposing an exemption from the mitigation costs for that type of failure in a natural catastrophe. For existing single-family lots, what I'm proposing is that we require that the minimum canopy coverage requirements be met. So if you look at a site where there's a 12-inch live oak and a 40-inch live oak, 40 inches on the front of the lot and it's going to be saved, but the 12-inch needs to be removed, and it would be a fee in most situations, but in that circumstance, because they're meeting that minimum canopy coverage left on site, we'll allow them to remove that other tree without a fee. And then the last one here is tree protection inspections during development. This is really a staff time provision. It's listed in the ordinance currently as a required inspection pre-construction. I'm proposing random inspections. Currently, I visit the site as they're mobilizing. I visit as they're under construction, and I do a zoning site closeout at the end. So I do hit all of those intervals, and that just allows, rather than every single project reaching out and saying, we need an inspection on this day before we can start for trees, I just monitor and visit at the appropriate times and don't need to have that back and forth. So that's worked out pretty well in the past.
However, I would assume that when you said, so that random would be throughout the whole process, right?
Yes.
You still would always have like a final review at the end, correct?
Correct. So both Michael and I do a final site inspection for engineering and for zoning requirements.
And if it's found during that final that they had cut some stuff down that they weren't approved or didn't go through, then there's penalties that kick in.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So it's monitoring that there's no damage during construction, that the appropriate protection areas or the buffer zones are put in place around trees that are being protected during construction. Okay. Any other questions on that slide? Nope. Okay. So the next thing that I looked at and honed in a little bit on was the specimen and landmark tree list. It was requested that we look at removing some of the species that are less desirable that did gain protections under the current ordinance. So I am removing laurel oaks, water oaks, sweet gums, and pine species other than longleaf. And I believe 3 out of the 4 of those were something that was kind of directed to staff, the laurel oaks, water oaks, and sweet gums specifically. Then the other side of that is simplifying the list. So not just removing, but there's several species that are hardwood overstory trees that create large canopy, and they all have varying sizes at specimen and landmark. So what I'm doing here is putting them into one category for the others. So, you know, the hickories, the sycamores, the black cherries, other species of oaks that aren't on the list, all of those will be put into that all other category. So they'll become specimen at 24 inches and landmark at 36, but there won't be all these tiny little variations for every single species. So that's functionality on both development side and staff side as well for review.
I think diversity is very important with our forest.
Yeah.
You know, and we want to make sure that we have a diverse, if not, we'll have issues. No doubt about that.
Right. And then that you know, that what that does is also fine tunes the way that we can look at, okay, well, this is a significant species that doesn't exist anywhere else on the site, and not just it's a certain size, so they can cut it down with less foot pushback, basically.
Sure.
Next one, please, Lisa. Okay. Landmark tree removal. Currently, as you all know, the Design Review Board has the authority on removals for landmark trees. What I'm proposing, and I'll give you a few reasons why, is that we identify a tree review committee of staff and staff consultants. So it would be planning, building, the town architect, the town arborist, and as much as Michael might duck his head, engineering if it comes to it for, if we're accommodating a tree that is placed in the middle of a right-of-way and it'll be paved around, those kinds of site review things. A couple of reasons for that. One, just observing the past year of the Design Review Board and the difficult discussions that they have and the way that it can get political for them, it hinders their process.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, their main priority and what they are tasked with is reviewing architectural merit and site planning. And so if you task them with that and with whether or not a tree within that site can be removed, the two rely on each other, so they need to know what they're working with before they can talk about the site plans. Otherwise, they get into, well, I really like the design of this building, but this tree is here, so I can't approve any of it. It really, it's kind of a conflict in their process, I think.
That should be a staff decision.
It's awkward. And so that will still allow, that staff committee would make a determination if architecture and site planning is coming into play with that specific tree being approved or denied. We'll still have that discretion in the design review process to forward it to the board for review of the architecture and site. But it takes that burden off of them and places them back in their wheelhouse with what they should be dealing with, in my opinion. Next slide, please. All right, here's the big one. A sip of water. Mitigation fees. First bullet, you can see that I'm proposing to lower the mitigation fees. The fees that I'm proposing, for specimens, it's 2 times what it was previously, and for landmarks, it's 2.5 times what it was previously.
We knew that.
If you look at The penalties in what's being proposed, cutting without a permit is double the fee, and you must replace 100% of those inches. So the example there is that if a 30-inch live oak is removed without a permit, the fee would be $15,000, and they would also be required to plant about 10 to 15 trees. And that would either be on their property, on town property, or paid into the tree fund in addition. Those fees are still stronger than any jurisdiction I can find in the area. They are 2 to 2.5 times the city's mitigation fees. I looked at Bluffton and Hilton Head. They charge by nursery cost for mitigation, and when you look at what they're charging based on current nursery costs, and then they divide it by the number of inches that are being removed, it actually nets out lower than what we would receive from this fee schedule. I have noted, I think, in the past that we have collected almost less than negligible amount of tree fund dollars in the past year since we passed this ordinance. From what I'm seeing, whether it be large developers or single-family lot owners, they're holding their land. They're not pushing forward or bringing ideas to the town with what they want to do with their property, knowing that they've got trees that will create a very, very high number for fees. Just some examples of that would be, I've had 2 different properties in the redevelopment district where I've had discussions. They realized what was going on with the trees, and they either went radio silent or they became extremely hesitant, both of which are prioritized as catalyst sites for the redevelopment commission this year. And then within existing subdivisions that have HOAs, you all are probably aware as well, they're having issues developing vacant lots within their HOAs, which then can then impact, the money that they're bringing in to maintain and improve their individual neighborhoods. So the other side of that is that when the Design Review Board does approve a removal of a landmark tree, we have seen each time that they're waiving the fees, because that fee is so high for somebody who's building a single-family home and going to move into it, that they feel like the burden is too great and they don't want to put that burden on somebody. So kind of all around, we have seen that the high fees don't translate to high amounts of money coming into the tree fund.
Well, but it stopped cutting a lot of trees. It did what it was intended to do.
What it was intended to do.
Yes,
Right.
we weren't here to make, it wasn't a profit center we were going for.
No, I know.
We
but-
got a $10 million budget balance.
Yes, but-
We don't want all the trees
And you
cut.
just reaffirmed.
Okay, well, just as an example, we
So it's
have,
working.
It's
I think
working.
about 8 months ago, I was asked to get a quote for tree maintenance at the Naval Heritage Park, and then we were going to do John Parker, because we had just completed Live Oak Park, which was $26,000, and that depleted the funds we had in the tree fund already. And so then I was asked, well, this looks great, let's do it at Naval Heritage. Well, that was $56,000. That money was all gone, and we haven't even put a chip into that amount that we need to use, the $56,000 that we could use from a tree fund if we were collecting at a more frequent rate. So just something to consider. I'm open to any discussion you all have about the fee amounts.
Yeah, so let me understand, so with what you're proposing, there would be the fees to pay and the replant.
What I'm proposing is kind of a hybrid, where in the past you were allowed to choose.
Yeah. Currently, you have to do both.
Yeah, currently you have to do both. What I would be proposing is that, one, our priority has changed within our ordinance on what needs to be saved, and how much emphasis we place on that. And so once you get to the point where you're approved to remove trees, you would be required to replant to your maximum extent possible first, and then we would revisit and see if you need to pay a fee to the town. But
So they're going back to getting the choice of if they're.
they're not getting a choice. They're being required to replant to the point where they've hit that maximum for street trees,
and if
for
they
open
don't,
space,
they're
that kind of thing. And then the remainder would be required to be paid in the tree fund.
Okay. All right, well, I'll kind of say I appreciate that. I'm just kind of, talking openly. I mean, taking out some of those dangerous specimens, I think everyone was kind of
I
in
agree.
concurrence there. I think this is a drastic drop in fees.
I agree.
I hear you. If people are holding on to their land, you know, I mean, that's their decision.
Well, let me ask you guys something. I mean, what are you hoping to accomplish with extremely high fees?
Meet in the middle.
Complete deterrence of development?
No, not complete deterrence, but.
That's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we ask y'all.
We don't want another
1,500 units permitted in Port Royal right now, right?
We don't want
No.
another Harris.
I thought
Teeter.
that's what we
Well,
heard the
that's
other day.
anticipated or approved, so.
Yeah, I mean, right before we went into the moratorium, I was told we had 1,500 units on the books permitted.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about.
I'm just saying.
I know, I'm not talking about
You're saying
multifamily
what's the,
development.
you know.
I don't want to see another Harris Teeter parking lot.
But we won't let that. I'm just throwing it out there to you guys to think about what.
You're looking for direction, yeah. I
Yeah,
understand.
so that's why I've proposed this,
And it
because I
got their
think it
attention.
is a decent increase from what it used to be, but it's,
And what is the
it
town?
hits the pocket, but it's
We don't wanna be
feasible.
soft.
Yeah, and what is the cities now? Because I know they're talking about it now that they.
Their number is $50 for specimens and $100 for landmarks.
That's their most recent? 'Cause I
That's
know
their
they're-
current.
Okay,
Is that
current.
current?
I know they're
What
talking.
their discussion
Yeah,
is
they're
on.
looking at it, yes.
Yeah, they're looking at it right
Future.
now in their work
So is
sessions
Bluffton.
and trying to bring theirs up because of what we were doing.
So is Bluffton.
Yeah. I guess my recommendation would be if this feels too low,
And in
let's try
fact,
to find a happy medium.
I was listening
All
to
right,
the news.
I agree with that.
Recently, and
I'm
Savannah.
down with it.
Cool.
I think there's a town in Georgia that is now looking at Bluffton and trying to be as strict as Bluffton. You know, Bluffton's also. I forgot what the name of it was. Part in Georgia was the town in Georgia that's trying to emulate Bluffton.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is, you know, to me, like I said, I've been mayor terms 4 years. My goal is not in my 4 years to see how much development I could get. So that's not, like, at the end, I'm not gonna check that box and just, well, we developed every inch of Port Royal, so that was a success. But I understand you actually don't, but you don't want to put a complete halt on everything, absolutely. So this seems too low. I know what you're saying about finding a happy medium. I'm gonna look into what the city's looking at, because I know they are talking about upping theirs currently because of what we've done. So, I mean, they're trying to keep up with us, or not keep up with us, they'll get mad that I just said that,
Trying to be.
yeah, exactly, so, but, okay.
Yeah, so with the fees, if you have ideas, please forward them over to staff. I'm happy to make changes to these proposals that'll, everybody's comfortable with.
Okay.
And then,
Real quick,
Sorry.
this with cutting without a permit is double the fee and replaces it. Okay, so. Okay.
so you know,
just
if
a
you,
penalty if they just go ahead and just cut.
yeah,
Didn't, if I'm correct, wasn't there something in the new ordinance that if they were in the process of, if they were constructing and cut a tree down, they got a 2-year
Right.
stop?
Halt.
Right, that's what I just
Correct.
mentioned.
Can't
So-
do the permit issue.
So that
They-
would be
it
on
would
top,
be-
so that would be this fine on top of 2-year stop on their
So-
whole project?
So just,
That remains.
if you took the 30-inch live oak and multiplied it by 30, you're looking at almost $500,000 and 2 years of deferral, which would be more appropriate of a number
They just went and
for
clear
a.
cut everything? yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
We got to keep that deferral in there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And there's a lot in this ordinance that has worked really well. These are just the things I'm calling out that might need some tweaking, so. And then the final slide, please. This is a recommendation that was given by the redevelopment commission. So you all voted to adopt the Gateway to Port Royal overlay zone for our redevelopment district this spring. At the same time, the redevelopment commission was discussing the tree ordinance's impact as they discussed that overlay zone. We hadn't started the review of the tree ordinance yet, so it was more so just what's not working in the current ordinance for our specific area. And they voted to recommend that the entire previous tree ordinance be added as an amendment to the current tree ordinance, rather than amendments or specific requirements for the gateway within the amendment, or within the ordinance, rather. But again, that was several months ago. So in that time, I've reviewed the entire ordinance, kind of thought out all of the concerns that they had, and I've tried my best to incorporate their suggestions and their concerns into the amendments that I'm proposing. And then, obviously there is that there is that reduced fee for commercial properties in certain zoning districts, and that would cover reduced fees for the redevelopment district, rather than the addition of the old ordinance as an appendix. So I've included their recommendation. Obviously, I didn't feel it was appropriate not to forward their recommendation to you. But I would say that I think I've incorporated their concerns, fees, the replacement planting standards, the wait times for board review when it's somebody that we really want to get moving with a project that's going to benefit the redevelopment of Rebo Road. So it might be a little bit redundant now and bulky and confusing to include the entire old tree ordinance as an appendix to this ordinance. But again, I've included it because that was their recommendation to you all. So.
And again, this would just be for the overlay district.
Correct.
Gotcha. Which is a must-do. That's the last year's, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just, I can walk you through, if you need before readings, I can walk you through kind of why I would recommend that what I have in there works, and I can there's a couple language tweaks I would have to make to do it that way rather than adding it as an appendix. But that's up to y'all, so.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any questions from council at this time?
No, but thank you for that.
Thank you.
You didn't blow it. You did well.
Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot, Noah, appreciate it.
Better get your water.
All right. We're just rolling on with the reviewing the agenda for next week.
Second readings.
So next we'll have the second readings, and our first one will be 2024-10, which is an ordinance to amend as follows, Section 1 of Ordinance 2023-9 to provide for the levy of taxes for ordinary town purposes in the town of Port Royal, South Carolina, for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024, and to provide for the expenditures thereof. We have had our budget workshop earlier, as well as a public hearing. This is with, minus our court department, which will be in the next ordinance. This is anticipating a budget of $10,179,000, and this does include a 3.25 cost of living adjustment and no projected millage increase.
Okay. Great, thank you.
And then 2024-11 is an ordinance to approve the court department budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024. Next, we have resolutions 10-2024. It's an addendum to employer resolution for participation in the state insurance benefits program regarding county municipality council member coverage. This is just to in order to continue providing the option of health insurance to our elected officials. We received that in order to do so, we need to pass this resolution, and that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Council action items, we have the approval of our committee members that you just heard interviews from. I'm not sure what order, I don't see where that one is on this sheet. I'm not sure if that was first. No, the council action.
You have the first one, that one's first, and this is second.
Yeah, okay, we just need to add for the appointments.
Yes.
Okay, so A is going to be the approval of West Paris drainage improvement bid. In your package, you will see that there is a memo we put out for an RFP for the West Paris Avenue. This is to the drainage project that we have there. This is a RIA grant that we've received, and this is phase 1. We have both West Paris Avenue plus the village area. We received 2 proposals, one from Gulfstream Construction and the other one from Joco Construction, and we are proposing to go with Joco Construction, which is our lower bid, for $815,000. That is to include, we had to add an alternate price of $98,000, which, if you'll recall, we just did all the downtown paving in Port Royal, and we held off doing that area just anticipating this project, so this is to include that paving section. Okay. And then approval of, B is approval of 12th Street sidewalk proposal. I do not have that in your packet. We received the proposal today and had a couple of questions and amendments, so we should have that in either tomorrow or Friday for you. We're estimating that's going to be roughly about $65,000 for the sidewalk along the school property.
Okay, along the school?
Yes, sir.
On that side.
Okay, important dates, let's see. Amazing. Okay, Saturday, June 8th, 2024 will be the Rewboat Run 5K. Miss
Okay.
Pamela, what time is your run starting? 8 a.m. Be there, be square. And then Wednesday, June 12th, 2024, we're going to have our council meeting at 6:30 p.m. And then just looking forward a tad bit, we've got Saturday, June 15th is going to be an exciting day. We have a ribbon cutting ceremony for Windhorse over at the Shed, as well as our concert series. So that'll be a fun day to be in Port Royal.
We're turning 10 July 4th, so we're having a 10-year anniversary party on June 27th at our shop.
Cool.
The chamber, so it's the business after hours with the chamber, but
Yeah.
also the food truck, weather's going good, from 5 to 7.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yes. Sorry, I won't be there.
I'm going to be
I got Elkhart.
I want to be
Low
there.
Country Council of
Yeah.
Governments.
I know you'll be there.
I'd love to be there. but Have to go to Yamasee. That's right.
And then we just, we'll have an executive session for personnel matters, the town manager's evaluation that we annually do.
All right. Thank you very much, Brooke.
You're welcome.
All right, next back to the council workshop
Comment
agenda.
about
Yes, sir.
next week's meeting.
Yes, sir.
I will request a Zoom link.
Okay.
I won't be able to be here in person. We've got a family vacation, but I do want to take part of the meeting.
Can I go?
Yeah, come on. Come on. And I'll have my evaluation. I'll have all that taken care of.
Perfect.
But I'll just, Sean, send me a link or something.
Yeah, make it.
That's cool.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions for Brooke?
No.
Okay. All right, next we got public comments. We've got two up here, and again, if there's anybody that would like to make a comment on the streetscape that we saw, because like I said, I know y'all just saw that this time. But first, I've got Mr. Scott Clark.
I'll make this quick, because I know you're all tired. My name's Scott Clark. I'm the president of the Friends of Port Royal Cypress Wetlands. And as I think everybody knows, I'm excited to report that Port Royal has been nominated in two categories for the best of the Low Country. They've been nominated for the Cypress Wetlands and also for the best nonprofit organization, which is the Friends of Port Royal Cypress Wetlands. I encourage everybody who can hear my voice that they need to go vote early and often. And to vote, you need to go to votelowcountry.com, or you can go to our Facebook page for Friends of Port Royal Cypress Wetlands and click on the link, and it'll take you there also. Then click on Stay and Play, then click on Attractions, then click on Cypress Wetlands. It'll ask you to back out to another category, do that, and then click on Services, Nonprofit Organizations, and click on Friends of Port Royal Cypress Wetlands. Then you have to hit two more buttons to submit the ballot, and you're good to go. So again, everybody please vote. I can't think of any reason why we shouldn't get both of these nominations.
That's great. And just a reminder, it's just be sure, because like you said, when you vote, you got that double click. It
Yeah.
says submit, and you think, oh, I just submitted, and then the next page is like confirm.
Yeah,
So make sure you
exactly.
you finish. I mean, you'll
Yes.
get a page that'll say.
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
'cause
you for that.
I've had a lot of people that, you hit the submit,
Yeah.
and I did it, but
Yeah.
there's one more.
And you can vote, oh, I forgot to tell you, everybody can vote for both once a day between now and June 21st is the deadline for all voting. So that's a lot of voting between now and then. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. Okay, and up next, Ms. Pamela Courtney. Got a lot going on.
Mayor and council members, thank you for having me. Pamela Courtney, Historic Port Royal Foundation.
As of today, we have 178 runners registered for the Rebo Run. There may be more coming in tonight, but it's going to be a great turnout. Even despite being June and we have warm weather, we have runners coming from Maine to Florida coming into town. So it'll be, they're going to be in our restaurants, they're going to be around. So you see the T-shirts, come on, make sure that just have that. The other thing is that earlier in this last year, we talked about Sam Murray Education Scholarship. And yesterday we selected that student. And it would have been everything that Sam would have wanted. There was a few tears, like that when we sat down, and she attends USCB. By the time she got to college, she already had 2 years of associate's degree under her belt. She is an education major. She wants to graduate debt-free, which just excited us. Everything in her application was perfect. I mean, there wasn't anything. Her personal statement, her letters of reference, she sent in all of her reports, and so it was so impressive that one of the committee members has already taken her application to Dr. Rodriguez to make sure that she has a job when she graduates, which will be next year. She's coming in on her last end, and because she wants to be elementary school, that we're hoping that maybe that she'll become a teacher at Port Royal Elementary.
Yeah, great.
So we don't have the date yet when she's going to be presented with the check, but we'll let you all know. But we just think what a great thing, and it was.
Yeah.
It just that it brought it together.
Okay.
Thank you.
And really quick with that.
Sure.
So when he gets the check, can we get her in here?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we need to do that and recognize her.
Yeah, they were talking about whether, want to do it USCB or want to do it here, at that, and just to let you all know, because this would be great to see her
Absolutely.
face. Her name's Claire King, and she's a South Carolinian
Yeah,
that's going to be a teacher here.
So yeah, if we can get her in here and, give her a little praise, that'd
Yeah.
be great. One more thing, mention Sam Murray.
Mhm.
I know we've all seen that
Yes, the
coming
sign,
up.
the new
I don't know if
sign.
y'all seen the library sign.
right.
That looks really great.
That's
That's
right.
something that's special
That's
out there.
great. So 2 good things for Sam.
Yep. And then just one more thing I just hit on because I'm looking forward. I'll be there on this run, but I
Yeah,
don't
you're
know.
looking more and more like Jean Ribot,
Is it? I should get the little fluffy, the neck and
Looking good there.
But when, just to remind everybody, so if you are running, you pick up for because you have to get a new number now.
You have to get a new number at Ground.
Pick up is
Running.
Friday.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's right. And if you're,
I didn't register.
yeah, and so you do have to pick up your new number.
Okay.
And we still can take some of that stuff through PayPal, but just come. Just come.
Okay, perfect. I was just saying that more for everybody listening because I saw that email. If you did register for the last one, you
That's it.
just stop by
Thank you
Grounded
for
Running on
that.
Friday and get your new packet. So.
We'll be there.
And I'll talk about maybe next month, talk about the storytelling.
Perfect.
Okay?
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Cordy, absolutely.
Jerry, you running?
Well, no.
I'll be there.
We're going on vacation starting Saturday.
Yeah.
But I know when we were going to do it before, I think we were all going to try to do
Yep,
it. but
yep.
I'm unable to because I'll be out of town.
I won't be running, but I'll be there walking.
I'll be walking maybe too, maybe halfway.
Unless Trish runs with me.
All right, so that wraps up public comment. We have now appreciate everyone hanging out. We've been here for almost 3 hours now.
But productive.
We have an executive session now for council to go into to talk about personnel matters, all the interviews that we just did. Like I said, we got 9 of them to discuss. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved to discuss personnel.
Get a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. I'll be
Thank you. And we're back from executive session. I will entertain a motion to get out of executive session.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Well, seeing as that is the last thing on the agenda, we will move over to
No action?
no action at this moment. We will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all, and we'll see you next Wednesday for our council meeting. Same place, same time.
Same bad channel.
Yep. Thank you all so much. Have a great night.
Good night, Port Royal.
Thank you.
Good night, Port Royal.